Well, good morning. Today we're going to be talking about searching for jobs and really searching for jobs generally, but the timeline for searching for jobs and being able to do that in the current day and age we live. Obviously, with 2020, we experienced a lot of changes in how we approach jobs because so much of work moved remotely in 2020. But we're starting to see some trends. And before we really dive into sort of the process of job search and the techniques and strategies we need to be using, it's really a good idea to think about the context. I mean, for most students, the job search itself is at least a 7-month process. So we'll walk you through some of that. But when you think about what you're entering, right now we're still in jobs recovery. The employment industry is in recovery. There's less jobs overall than there were 2 years ago at this time, mainly because of COVID. But the great thing is we are in a recovery. We're coming out of that. And when you think about 2021 being here, you're going to start to see some changes in who's in the workforce. A lot of people that were already in the workforce, well beyond college and employed, are now re-entering the workforce because they were unemployed during COVID or shifted to part-time work or some semi-full-time work. So college students, as they graduate, will now be up against more people and a different set of people in the employment world than you might once have thought. You're not just competing against people that you're graduating with, 21, 22-year-olds with a degree. You're competing against people who are re-entering the workforce for those same jobs you want. And many of those people will settle for jobs that are considered entry level, and that's what you're going to be searching for initially. But people will be settling for those that have already been in the workforce for years because it's all they can find at first. So we want to think about that. And what this means for you as a college student who's entering the workforce is you've got to be more intentional than ever to make sure you stay on top of the job search, follow the strategies and techniques we teach you, and really try hard. I mean, this is not something you can take a very relaxed approach for. You have to be extremely determined and extremely intentional about this. But one big trend you're going to see is the growth in remote work. And this is going to also open up maybe some work in different industries that you might not have thought about for your particular degree. So we want to stay very open-minded in our job search. Growth in the remote work may not have been something you ever thought about doing, that you would actually work from home at a computer all day. But more and more we're seeing this is still going to be a trend as you graduate. So pay attention to that. And I would say if you want to be employed, lean into that. This idea of working in an office space a couple days a week and working from home a couple days a week is going to be a hot trend, purely just to save money for companies. Some big mistakes that we see students make as they leave and jump into the job search. And again, we want you to avoid these mistakes, but think about some of these. You waste time applying for jobs you are not qualified for. Okay, we're going to talk about what entry level means, but as someone with a bachelor's degree and no master's degree and very little, if any, experience in a particular field, you're not ready for leadership or management in that field. So don't kid yourself. You need entry level experience. One of the things we see too is that people don't keep track of the applications they send and they end up applying for the same things multiple times. That does not make you look good. And when you put organized and detail oriented as buzzwords on your resume and then you do something like that, obviously you don't appear organized or detail oriented. So you don't want to do that. You want to make sure that you're keeping track of those things. And I'm going to give you some tips on how you can do that, because as you sort of take on this task, you're going to find that there are some things you need to note and take record of and keep up with. Many people used to send out generic resumes. Nowadays, we really teach you to customize your resume, and this is extremely important. But you're not in a generic job search. You're applying for specific jobs. So we want to send them a specific resume. They spent time to write a customized job description and a customized position announcement. We want to have a customized resume that really applies to that. And in our resume workshops, we talk about how to do that. I won't spend a ton of time on that today, but we want to make sure you're customizing it and using and leveraging that job description to help you do that effectively. And the other big mistake is we so often see where students and people hitting the job market just apply and don't do any sort of follow-up to find out where they are in the process, or even if their application was received and looked at. So you want to make sure that you're following up. We're going to talk about that today because follow-up is essential. You have to follow up and follow up in an appropriate way. Now, here's a big news flash. You need entry-level experience. You're leaving college with very little work experience. And honestly, though you may have had a great academic program, very little real-world knowledge of the industry, the field, the organizations you're going to work in and apply for. So you need to stay open-minded. You need to be applying for entry-level experience. And one of the big wake-up calls for students is they think the salary for entry-level jobs is too low because you have unrealistic expectations about what you should be making as you exit college. when you exit college, you probably will not be making nearly what your parents are making today as they pay for you to go to college, because they've worked for 20 years and you've not. So please stay open-minded and apply for jobs that you have the adequate experience level for. If you read a job description and it says 5 years plus experience in particular field, and you're just graduated from college, you don't have 5 years of experience in that yet. And so you're probably not going to be qualified for that. And that is a waste of your time. So let's stay very open-minded about that as we move forward. So let's talk about the timeline. This is why we do this workshop so early in the spring semester. It's January, and you cannot wait to February really to start this. Okay, so 7 months, 8 months even out from graduation, you need to be thinking about some of these big questions. And some of them are pretty simple, but they're hard to answer sometimes because we haven't thought about it. But where do I want to live? I mean, you graduated from college. You could live anywhere. Do you want to move back home? Do you want to live in a particular city, a particular country? Is the industry or the job what's going to drive and dictate where you live? Some industries and jobs also have a very specific timeline for how quickly you can get into their applicant pool. What do you know about those things? Think about the style of work. We talked a little bit about remote work, but are you open to applying for remote jobs? Are you open to applying for jobs that have a lot of travel or not? Maybe it's a job that's going to have you dress up and be in a very formal atmosphere most of the time, or maybe it's a very casual atmosphere that you preserve. Think about your salary and the realistic salary for you and the area you're going to live in. You can go online and just do a quick Google search and look at the median incomes and the household incomes and the standard of living, the cost of living in different cities around the country, and compare those to salaries you're seeing in positions online. I had a student a couple years ago that graduated and was offered a great job in the Charlotte area and called me so excited to tell me all about that great job and had no clue what her salary was. She had accepted the job without ever asking, what does this job pay? And then when she found out that salary, she called me back and shared again how exuberant and excited she was for this salary. And then I said, well, are you sure you can live on that in the Charlotte area? She said, I have no idea, because she had never done any research to find out if that was a livable wage there. So you want to pay attention to those things. That's a quick Google search. You can do those kind of things. The Occupational Outlook Handbook, too, that's a resource on our website, also gives you lots of information that's up to date. It's provided by the state and federal government to give you an idea of what certain salary ranges are for different industries, positions, and types of jobs. So you can also use that. But the other thing you should be doing during this 7 to 8 month pre-period, this period prior to graduation, is to prep, practice, and polish. You need to get ready for being an employee. So obviously you want to start making sure we're adapting those professional behaviors, but practicing your interview skills, making sure that resume is just spot on and customized and very usable. And again, our office can help you throughout that. So now's the time. If you're graduating in May, you've got to be in this game. Some of those technical tools that you're going to use, obviously you're going to have a resume when you go into the job search. You know that. The interview is a tool itself, but your network is a tool. I mean, think about developing these relationships with people that may be hiring you or helping you find jobs one day is essential. 70% of the jobs that are available out there in the world today are not posted online. Only 30% of the actual jobs posted or the actual jobs that exist in the world today are actually posted online. So your network is how you develop that. And obviously LinkedIn is a networking tool. We've talked about that in other workshops. But the people who are out there in the workforce should be a part of that network. And you need to be communicating with people that maybe live back home that can help you find that job that it's in your hometown or in that home county you're from, that area you've always planned to return to. Or if you already know alumni and students who have gone ahead of you and are working in the Charlotte area and you want to work in Charlotte, you need to be building relationships with those folks so that they can be helping you find those jobs. They're out there working on your behalf, just as a friend, somebody that's in that network. You need to also work on your professional image, and not just a professional image to say, oh, I'm going to dress up and wear a suit or have a certain haircut, but the way you carry yourself. Even things like your social media, making sure that your social media conveys professionalism. Go ahead now that if you're applying for jobs, go ahead and create a professional sounding voicemail on your phone so that that's what picks up and not some humorous thing or something that you feel like is a little more casual. Make sure that you have a proper email address, because again, these are things that are going to be used in this. And then we're going to talk specifically today about some of the search resources that we think you should make primary during this search. These are the most important ones you should be participating in using. So 6 months out, so pre-graduation, you got to start really getting familiar with the industry's hiring cycle, and your faculty can be key to help with that. But you can also use things like LinkedIn just to get on the recruiting radar. Our office can help you do that as well. Using LinkedIn is so simple. And if you've not used it a whole lot, one of the first things you ought to do when you create a LinkedIn profile is go connect with me and connect with Shay Mattingly, who works with me, and connect with the Career Center, the GW Career page on LinkedIn. And that immediately, once you connect with us, you get access to all of our connections. And there's hundreds and hundreds of recruiters we're connected with. So you want to be getting on their radar and reaching out to those folks, but also just understanding what's going on in the industry. So is this an industry that hires 5 months out and they know I don't graduate till May? They're already offering jobs in February and March. Some industries are definitely like that, especially healthcare and education. But even a lot of business, a lot of larger companies, banking especially, that know the hiring cycles, they're already lining up May grads. They're giving them offer letters in March contingent upon their graduation in May. They leave with a job. So you want to be able to do that. And one of the things too, in staying organized about this is the time as you start to apply, you keep a log of where you've applied and where you are in the process. An easy way to do that is just grab a notebook and make a few columns and do that, or use Excel. But, list the name of the company, list the job title, list the contact people's information, and then have a little notes section out there that reminds you where you are and what's next. What's your next step? What do I need to follow up on? That sort of thing. I would say too, as a part of this right now, in that 6-month period, right now, if you're leaving Gardner Webb in May, you need to let everybody know exactly what type of job you're looking for, what specific industries or companies you're targeting, and the location, so that they can be out there in your network working on your behalf to send you back intel and feedback and give you a heads up when they find a job. And I think it's good too, especially as the semester moves on, set a weekly application goal. I mean, the numbers game is real. You're not going to get jobs you don't apply for. So let's make sure that we're using some volume here and applying for a certain number of jobs a week. Maybe it's 3 a week you get applications out there for, but then that means next week you've got to follow up with those applications and continue to work through those. So that's 6 months out. One of the big things you're going to find too, especially right now because of COVID, during that 6-month period, this job search has completely moved to a virtual format. You probably will not interview face-to-face with anybody. Just this week, we were doing some practice interviews with students and helping them interview online. And all those students that we worked with had Zoom interviews. They're not doing face-to-face interviews. It's not happening. So that's, again, you've got to make sure that you're using the tools to prepare. And that virtual job search is very different from how we applied for jobs just 10 years ago. Virtual applications, they're online. I mean, most every piece of that job process will involve you sitting at your computer. And one of the things I think students are surprised about is they don't hand out paper resumes anymore. You work on this resume in Word or online, and you create this thing that could be printed as a paper document, but seldom do those ever get asked for. You're going to be putting that information, cutting and pasting it into online forms online. So again, being able to do that efficiently and have good grammar and have that stuff proofread and make sure that you're checking for errors is really important when you submit those things. But master some of those technologies too. If you know you're going to be doing this job search online, get very familiar with the tools we talk about today and become an expert at it. And even with things like Zoom, become an expert at practicing using Zoom, but being able to share your screen if you have to do a presentation. A lot of times during a job, in an interview, you're going to actually be asked to do some presentation and demonstrate some of those skills, and using Zoom will be a part of that. So practice those things. We've already talked about networking online, but don't forget about things like virtual job fairs. We've had to do our first batch of those here at the university this year because of COVID. They've worked out great. We've had students get hired from those. We've had students find internships from those. But again, they're a new format. So a lot of times when we're prepping you for those, we send out a tips kit, a day of kit to kind of help you get ready for what that environment's going to be like so that you understand it. You want to be able to log on easily and use it and connect with the people that are out there virtually, just like you would in a face-to-face job fair. So using those tools and those prep tools we send out are important. The other thing about the virtual job search and working remotely is now, like never before, you can be part of a national candidate pool. Let's say the company that you're going to apply to is in Portland, Oregon, and you've never planned to move to Portland. Well, nowadays, because so much of the workforce has moved to a remote format, you may not have to. Now, the other side of that is it makes the competition a little richer because there's people from all over the country now applying for jobs that used to be physical in the geographic region you wanted to work in that are now remote. So maybe you had planned to work in banking in Charlotte all those years, and now that the applicant pool for those jobs has doubled or tripled because people from all over the country and all over the world can now apply for those jobs because they've moved into a remote format. So be thinking about those things. It changes how you approach the job search. But throughout that process, you can showcase your skills. Being virtual does not limit you in that ability to do that. So we want to be intentional and stay on the radar of these folks that we're being recruited from. Now, hopefully this spring, we'll have a face-to-face job fair at Gardner Webb like we always have. This past year, we didn't get to do it because of COVID. But hopefully this year, we'll be back on track. Wednesday, April 7th, it's scheduled to be a face-to-face career and internship fair like we've always had here at Gardner Webb. We'll probably have 80 plus employers here participating in that. Southeast regional employers usually. But if this moves online, we'll advertise it heavily and get you ready to be online just like we did last year. So just keep that on your radar, put that date on your calendar. So let's talk about expanding our network. Okay. Your network is such a vital tool in the job search process. You always start with your faculty because they know where previous students with your degree have been hired. That is your number one starting point. Talk to your faculty about where recent grads are getting hired and get in touch with those recent grads to incorporate them into that network so that they can help you get hired. A foot in the door through somebody like that relationally is so key. Alumni hire alumni. And that's true of every college and university. So you want to make sure that you're on their radar and moving forward through those relationships to get hired. Obviously, you're going to attend career fairs and things we're doing like that to expand your network, even if you're not in the job search process yet. Let's say you're a junior looking at this video today. I mean, go to the career fairs just to meet people and start to get on their radar and connect and to practice your professional conversation and professional interactions. You know to use LinkedIn. One of the easiest things you can do on LinkedIn is after you connect with someone, or even when you're actually sending your first connection request, you can send them a direct message and talk to them about your interests and what you're doing and ask for next steps and how you can apply for a specific job. But I remind students, everyone that knows about you becomes an asset to you because they can help you, and you just never know what relationship is going to connect you back to a particular opportunity. So expanding that network as a part of this and throughout this is huge. Let people know what you're doing. So 3 months out, pre-graduation. So this would really be like March. You got to start interviewing. You're not going to get a job in May if you're interviewing in May. You'll probably start a job in June or July if you're interviewing in May. Most employment interview processes take 2 to 3 months. So I would say that if you're 3 months out from graduation, you start interviewing. That means you've had to have applied already to get an interview. So make sure that you're following that timeline to do that correctly. And our office, again, will always be here to help you with those kind of things. We can help you do practice interviews virtually. And at some point, we'll be able to do them face-to-face again as well. But think about practicing phone interviews too. A lot of students think, well, I'm just going to be on a Zoom interview, and there are still phone interviews happening quite regularly. So practice and prepare for that. We have a great tool called Big Interview that's out on our website. It's free to you, but it allows you to go out anytime you want to and practice using some artificial intelligence, sort of a simulation environment where you can practice interviewing with all different types of people, where they're asking you the questions and you're answering them. And you can also video yourself and watch those videos. You can share it with faculty to get feedback. So it's a great way to practice. But if nothing else, just go to our interview page, print out those questions that are there, those common interview questions, and have a friend sit down with you and give you a mock interview and practice those things. Throughout that process, when you're interviewing, you don't just interview once. You keep interviewing, you keep applying, you keep the cycle going. So it's not a one and done. I don't interview and just wait. I keep applying. I keep expecting interviews. I keep moving forward through that 3-month time frame. After an interview, and this is so important because you're going to be doing lots of interviews, send a thank you email or a written note if that's your speed. I mean, if nothing else, communicate gratitude, not only when you're leaving that day or leaving the interview if you're doing it over Zoom, but make sure you're sending some kind of a message, a note to let them know you appreciate the opportunity. Sometimes they may give you some next steps during that interview process. You want to make sure that you complete those and follow through with those. Don't accept a position hastily. Make sure that you've asked the questions. I joked about the story of the student that didn't know the salary of the great job she had received in Charlotte, but you want to make sure that you're asking the right questions to make a good decision about that job, because you may have multiple offers at some point and be having to weigh the pros and cons of each. Submit references as directed. This is something they're going to probably ask you to do right after an interview, is to go ahead and give all the contact information for your references, and make sure you plant the right seed with those references. Have the appropriate references, people that know you well. The farther you get away from the university environment, the less those professors become a relevant reference for you. But make sure you're planting the seed, the story you want told about you with those references. And about a week after your interview, it never hurts to go ahead and inquire again to ask where they are in the process, if they needed anything else from you. Get a call. This is about staying on their radar. You can ask for feedback about your interview, any particular timeline details they can share. But again, it's to allow you to stay on their radar. You don't want to be hasty. You don't want to be pushy or obnoxious, but a simple email or phone call a week out would not hurt. Then what I would do is every 2 weeks, if I'm serious about pursuing that job, every 2 weeks, I would make a contact with them to find out where they are in the process and to stay on their radar. Again, you don't do this in a pushy way or an obnoxious way, but you do it in such a way that it lets them know I'm being polite, and I'm just double checking to make sure I'm still in the process and in the search. So, how do we actually search for opportunities? So, again, since so much of this is going to be online, a lot of our conversation is going to hinge on that. We've talked a little bit about how our network can produce some leads for us, but eventually, for most of us, we're going to have to go online at some point and really start to search for jobs. And this was something you probably had to do with your internship at some point. So, we talked about spreading the word through your network. Well, some easy ways to do that too is send a mass email or a Facebook post or a LinkedIn message to everybody you know, letting them know, here, this is the industry I'm about to enter. This is the degree I'm receiving. This is my timeline. If you know of any jobs, please send them my way. This is not a shameless thing to do. This is how you network, and it's an okay thing. And a lot of people just love to hear an update from you, to know about those things. So make sure you're using those simple tools. I mean, even a Facebook post can get you on a lot of different people's radar, including alumni who may have opportunities. So let people know what's going on. Ask that network for referrals regularly. And I think it's important too, when you're thinking about your network, if you find somebody who's doing the work you think you want to be doing, you need to call that person and interview them. Ask for a 30-minute interview, contact them by email, reach out to them on LinkedIn, say, hey, can I talk to you for 30 minutes and find out what I can be doing to move towards the type of work you're doing. Ask them how they got into those roles. How did they end up in those positions? That's also a great way to get on their radar, and who knows, their company may be hiring. I would say too, when you're doing this by LinkedIn, don't send them a resume. If they want to see your resume on LinkedIn, it's going to be there as part of your profile. So don't feel like you have to send that to them as a direct message unless they ask for it. But again, connecting with those recruiters on LinkedIn is a great way to do that too. You can also contact them for advice on how you can break into a particular company or industry. So when we think about the tools we're going to be using to search online, the number one tool for a Gardner Webb student is WebWorks or Handshake. Handshake is the platform. We call it WebWorks just to have sort of a Gardner Webb spin on it, but Handshake is the largest employer to college student platform in the world. And Gardner Webb pays big money for you to have access to this, so please use it. It works just like LinkedIn. When it comes to the job search function, or Glassdoor, Indeed, some of those other sites that we'll talk about. But Handshake is the number one platform for you to use. It's listed in your Web Connect portal on the left-hand side as WebWorks. It's quick and easy to set up your profile and just go to start searching for jobs. All of these platforms are going to ask you to use filters to narrow your search. So things like geographic area, the type of industry, the type of job, those kind of things. You want to make sure you're using that to get an accurate picture of what's available. But when you also work on your profiles, that lets recruiters out there find you. The great thing about Handshake is that the companies that Gardner Webb students can see, the jobs that Gardner Webb students can see in Handshake, they are intentionally placed there by companies. They have selected Gardner Webb students to be able to view those, and they have to do that. So you know that they've done enough research on their part to make sure that they understand the type of majors and degrees we have here, the type of students, and really the legacy that our students have left in different industries. I mean, this is not by mistake that you can view those jobs. So you want to make sure that you understand they're targeting you when you're looking at those things. Now, in addition to WebWorks, there's great tools out there. Obviously, you know about LinkedIn, but Glassdoor, Indeed, ZipRecruiter are probably the top sites that we see. There's also another site that's coming online, pretty common now. It's called Ladders, or theladders.com. And it's about, I mean, it works just like these others. They have a lot of information and articles out there on Ladders, but it also has a big job search tool, just like LinkedIn, Glassdoor, some of these others. All of these are going to ask you to create a profile, and you want to max out that profile to make sure that you provided every bit of information you can so recruiters can find you, because recruiters pay to use these services. Where you're searching for jobs out there, recruiters are searching for applicants and qualified applicants. So you want to make sure that you're using that information and really maxing it out. You can also go to the HR and employment pages of company websites. So you're doing a very targeted search to find information. You know, let's say you knew that you wanted to live in the Atlanta area and work for Coca-Cola. Well, you should be on Coca-Cola's website looking at their employment page to find out what jobs they offer. Now, you could probably find some of that same information on these other search sites, but why not go to the source? So you definitely want to look at the HR and employment pages of these companies that are hiring, people like you. And let's say, for instance, you're an accounting major. Well, you don't just have to work for an accounting firm. Lots of large companies have internal accountants and controllers and people that do that type of work. So stay open-minded about the type of companies you're looking into, and don't just look for jobs. Look for companies and industries that you feel like your degree and your training is applicable for. And again, your faculty can be key in helping you with that. Doing some of those targeted online searches can really help you uncover some things that at times are not listed publicly. Like a lot of times, larger companies will only list their positions on their website and not put them on these search sites like Glassdoor and Indeed. So you want to make sure that you're out there canvassing these areas and looking at them appropriately. And a lot of times on these HR pages, you may find a direct contact where you can call and ask questions and do some research. But again, it's a great way to get on their radar. Another neat tool is if you're thinking about moving to a particular area to work. I mean, I had a student not too long ago just was wanting to live in the Nashville, Tennessee area, but did not have a job yet. One of the first things you can do if you're using the sort of location and geography to drive that search is to go to the Chamber of Commerce website for that city or county. That Chamber of Commerce site usually will have a list of all the major, if not every company in that area. And it'll usually link to their website. So you can start there, link to their website to learn about the companies, but then go to their HR pages to see what they're hiring for. So this is another neat way to do that. The other thing great about Chamber of Commerce sites, they usually list when they're having employment events like job fairs and sort of meet and greet events and networking events. This would be great if you're moving to a new area. And it's a great way to continue to get on the radar of different companies and different recruiters who attend these events. It's really important too when you're looking at job search tools to vet the opportunities. Don't just apply for everything, especially if it's something you don't know about. You can do a Google search to learn more about different companies. You can look at the Better Business Bureau site. The Chamber of Commerce site is a good way to vet those because they're usually pre-vetted before they share them. But let's say you find a job out on WebWorks and you're just not sure about it. Well, most everything on WebWorks we have vetted ourselves on Handshake to make sure it's legit. But there are times where you'll see that someone's asking you to pay for training as a part of the application process, or that it's a temporary position until you're full-time, or you have to go through a certain amount of training and pay for a particular piece of equipment or something. Never agree to pay for anything. If a company wants to hire you and they're legit, they'll take care of all of that. So on all of these sites, Handshake, Indeed, Glassdoor, ZipRecruiter, all these things, you've got to maximize your profile. Now, LinkedIn is very profile heavy because it is a networking site and a job search site, but most of these others primarily sort of are designed around the job search tool. And if you don't have that profile maxed out, you're not going to be as easily identified as a qualified candidate. So make sure you're using the tools that they offer you. They're going to ask you tons of questions and you're going to start answering those questions and get tired of it. Don't let it tire you. You've got to make sure that you're using that information and filling those things out to the full. And if you ever need our help with any of that, you can. It's not just, hey, I've uploaded my resume and I'm off to it. No, you've got to answer lots of questions and make sure that you're sharing information relevant to the industries that you want to go to work in. And you'll see on these tools, this is just a screenshot here from Handshake. They're going to have a search tool out there and it's going to ask you for different things. And most of them have similar things that look like this, but you're really filtering down your search so that you get good information. I mean, you don't want to search and find thousands of jobs, then most of them not be applicable for your degree or your training. So use the search tools and filter accordingly. I mean, they're going to help you do this because it helps them be an effective tool that you want to return to again and again to use. So use these filters to make sure that you're sort of, narrowing your scope as you search for jobs. It's not hard to do. And some of those keyword searches too, I mean, you're going to be typing in keyword searches for different jobs and things that you think are associated with that degree or you think are associated with that particular position or industry. Know what you're looking for. I mean, start with the ideal job title and see what comes up. You may want to ask your faculty for help with some of that too. Know in different terms. Our office can obviously help with that too, but know what is intended for your industry. Know the lingo. And knowing the terms that you start to see different terms in job descriptions, maybe you realize that you've been calling a particular job or position the wrong thing. So for instance, again, if you're an accountant, maybe you need to search words like controller or auditor or bookkeeper, because again, those all fall into the accounting sort of industry. So you want to think about those synonyms. And again, a quick Google search can help you do that. So expanding your knowledge in that area is a really, really good thing to do. What jobs are associated with your major? Sometimes there's all kinds of jobs associated with your major. If you're an English major, there's so many different things you could be doing that have nothing to do with English literature, let's say. So you want to think about that, and your faculty are a great place to help you do that. But ultimately, think about it, what it is you want to do for work with that degree. What have you been planning on? You can also look up what some of your alumni are doing on LinkedIn and see their position titles and then search their position titles on these job search sites. We already talked a little bit about interviewing people. But again, the more you do that, the more you sort of expand your knowledge of what's going on in your industry, what the hiring picture looks like, and what a lot of those job titles look like. You'll know what to search for. And again, our office can always help you with that if you need it. So you can use location. We talked about this too, that, narrowing by location will really help you, because if you're not really interested in moving anywhere in the country, please don't portray yourself that way, and don't apply as if you will. If you know you're not ready to move all the way to California from North Carolina, don't apply for jobs in California unless you know for sure they're remote and 100% remote, because that's not a commute you're going to make. So you want to think about that. What's regional for you, what's drivable. Where you want to live plays in for a lot of students as a big factor. So even think about generic titles. When you're narrowing that search, think about words like coordinator, associate, manager. I mean, even putting in the word entry-level accountant or entry-level name a position, fill in the blank, might help you find the right things to start with. If you're in the business world and you just type in sales, there's going to be hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of jobs you see, but are they jobs you're interested in? Well, you won't know. So let's narrow that search using some of these other key terms to do that. This is really important to use your time wisely when you're in the search, and to find things that really are a best match for you. So don't overlook those things. Specific skills may help, but again, your faculty or our office can help you sort of craft some of that if you're struggling with that part. Now, we talked about maxing out our profiles on these job search sites. This is a huge thing, but there's some simple things you can do even on LinkedIn to let recruiters know that you're searching. Now, right now, it's very common on LinkedIn for people to have this green sort of wreath around their face that says open to work. Well, what that says to a recruiter is unemployed, and unemployed people are harder to re-employ. And most recruiters are looking for people who are still working to move into new careers or new jobs. Now, they understand that college students are not in the workforce yet, and that they are new to the industries or new to the job search. So they can have that on there if they would like it. But under LinkedIn and most of these search sites, it has a little button or a little check box that you can use to give some details about what you're looking for to help recruiters find you and identify you quickly. You can also follow particular industries and recruiters on sites like LinkedIn and get alerts, and make sure that you're turning on those alerts for any of those job search sites. Hey, you might get 100 emails, but every one of those emails could be a potential job for you. So don't overlook that. And one of the big things you got to do as a part of this is check your email every single day and make sure your voicemail is not full, so that people can leave you messages about the jobs you're applying for. So it's really important to do that, to communicate, I am open for work, I'm ready to work, and let these tools help you. And LinkedIn, this is just some information here, but LinkedIn makes it pretty easy. If you haven't done this, they'll usually send you an alert message asking you if you want to do this or not. Again, I just talked about job alerts, but here's the button on LinkedIn where you can get those, and you can follow industries and companies and even specific people. And this is a great thing to do to build that network, but to also really make sure that you're staying up to date on what's available out there. Now, let's say you've applied for a job and you haven't heard back yet. Well, one of the things you can do is direct message the folks that are in that, maybe it's a recruiter or in the hiring cycle or in the hiring seat at that particular organization. You can direct message them on LinkedIn. You can email them questions. Another thing you can do on LinkedIn too is to start regularly sharing articles, or maybe even send an article directly to somebody who you know is a part of this search process, that demonstrates the fact that you know a lot about that industry. Again, you don't want to be annoying in this. You don't want to be obnoxious or sound like a know-it-all. But I would say to stay on their radar, you make a contact every 2 weeks if this is a job that you know you've not been ruled out of yet, you've not been removed from the process of, and that you're still interested in. Now, if you're not interested in it, then don't worry about it. But if you are, make sure you're staying on their radar. But you also need to continue searching and continue applying through this whole process. Even after graduation, you can't just stop the process and wait. You've got to stay active in it. You've got to stay engaged in it and make sure that it's happening. A lot of applications will have very specific directions, okay? So you want to follow all of those directions. I mean, provide every single thing they ask for, do it appropriately. If you need our office to help you do that, we'll always do that. But the process is pretty simple. You search, you apply, you follow up, you repeat. You search, apply, you interview, you follow up, and repeat. And then hopefully you get hired, and you will. I mean, most of our students, we have about a 50% hire rate upon graduation. And then within 6 months, 90+% of our grads are already hired in full-time jobs or in grad school. That's a great thing. But you've got to remember, this doesn't stop with one event. Well, I've applied and now I'm going to wait. Nope. You search, you apply, you follow up, you repeat. Continue that process. Now, I talked a little bit about organizing your job search just to keep your sanity throughout the process, but to also help you sort of remember where you are in a process, to know the next steps, and to follow up appropriately, to do whatever that next thing is needed. So you can do this. I talked about just having a notebook or using Excel, but make sure you're listing some details so that you can keep the positions separate. You may start to realize that they all sort of blur together because there's so many different types of positions you could be applying for. And you want to make sure that you're not sending the wrong information to the wrong employer and thinking you're talking to one employer. I've received cover letters before that were addressed to the wrong person or the wrong company because the person didn't pay attention enough to realize they had made a generic cover letter and forgot to change who they were addressing it to, and it was for a particular job that they wanted at a different office or a different place. It somehow got sent to me. So you want to make sure that you're using this to stay organized and professional throughout that search. And it's something you probably should look at on a weekly basis. Now, some of these sites like LinkedIn and Indeed, they'll help you track this stuff. So use those tools if it's easy for you to do it that way. But again, keeping up with this is extremely important. Now, you're going to get offers. Trust me, you're going to get offers. So maybe it doesn't feel like that in January because you're just starting that search and it feels a little scary and intimidating, but you're going to get offers for jobs. And you've got to make a good decision about understanding what those jobs are while you're in the process, while you're in an interview, asking the right questions, following up with the right questions, but make sure you understand all the details before you accept. I have seen so many people accept a job and then quit within the first 2 or 3 months because they didn't like it. And to me, that's poor decision making. That doesn't make you sound professional. You need to ask as many questions and get as much intel and background on that position as you can. So make sure you understand all the responsibilities and expectations of the job. Make sure you understand the dress code and the schedule. I mean, does this require nights and weekends? Can I come in at 9 or am I supposed to be here at 7:55? You need to understand that. You also need to understand the supervising hierarchy and those policies from HR and just company policies, things that you may not feel comfortable with at first, but you realize you've got to sort of endure because that's where the paycheck comes from. You need to have a clear understanding of that paycheck, and you need to not only know what your salary is, but you need to know what your net income is going to be minus taxes every month to see if you can live off of it. You need to know the pay cycle, and you need to understand your full compensation package, which includes your medical benefits like your health insurance and your retirement. And if you need help with that, your parents are a great group of people to ask. We also offer some workshops towards later in the spring that we'll have up online that you can look at as well. But hey, talk to some people about these things and make sure that when you get an offer, maybe you do share it with your parents and you ask them some questions about what they think about it and your friends and other people working in that industry. Make sure your monthly income will cover your living expenses. This is a real problem for college grads. So make sure that you've done your homework and you understand what that means. And it may mean you have to commute into a metro area from a suburban area to be able to afford the standard of living. You might not be able to live downtown right now because you just don't make enough money, even though you work downtown. So think about those things and make sure you're asking questions while you're going through that. The process of searching for a job can be stressful, right? And the emotional stages of the job search are real. We start off excited and then we sort of feel overwhelmed. Maybe we get a little obsessed with a particular job and we lose track of all the other things we're applying for. And then we start to get frustrated. And then we realize that we've applied for a bunch of things and now we're just waiting to hear back. And then we get excited again, we get impatient, and finally we get a job. Going through this process is normal. But just know that most people get hired and most people with college degrees have no trouble getting hired. But that doesn't mean you get hired in a day. It usually takes, like we've talked about, 7 to 8 months from this point to get hired. And again, most companies are not going to hire you in February when you don't graduate until May. So you start the hiring process, you get on their radar, you follow the steps we've talked about today, and know that most college grads are not going to start a new job after graduation before June 1st. June 1st is usually that start date for so many. And for some, it's July 1st because of the fiscal hiring cycle in a particular company or industry, that they know that the new year financially starts over on July 1, and that's when they do their sort of official start dates. So no, it may be July 1 before you start that, but you're going to start that process now moving towards that particular degree. So you may have questions about what we've talked about today. I'm sure you do. And again, our office is always here to help you. The easiest way to get in touch with us is just the word career@gardner-webb.edu. Email us those questions. If you would like for us to review your resume, we'll gladly do that. Send us an email. And again, if you have any questions at all or need help in the job search process, using a particular tool, finding a particular connection, we're here to help. So thanks for attending today, and let us know if you've got questions.